You are watching Park TV.
Welcome to Monadnock Tonight with your host, Steve Jackson. Coming to you live from the Park Theater in downtown Jaffrey, New Hampshire. Join Steve and his special guest today, actor, director, and author, Michael Dell'Orto. Now sit back, relax, and here's Steve.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome, friends, to the Park Theater and Park TV's Monadnock Tonight. It is Thursday, January 28th, 2021. It is just after 5 p.m. here on the East Coast, and this is show number 63. And I can say downtown Jaffrey, it is a tart 26 degrees out there. And yes, I am Steve Jackson. I'm the CEO of the Park Theater and your host. I'm so glad you could join us. Today, our guest has many talents, plus he has some important clues to tell you about. And I think you'll understand that as we begin our interview, but stay tuned for that. But first, a few notes on what's happening around here at the Park Theater, and specifically our offerings on the on streaming. And we have really something very special that begins tomorrow. It was at one theater. Now it's opening up nationwide at many, many theaters around the country. And it is a new award-winning film streaming online that starts Friday, January 29th, called Atlantis. It's from the Ukraine, and it is their official selection for the 2021 Academy Awards. And the best way to take a look at this is to watch this. We showed it a couple of weeks ago, I think, this amazing trailer, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it right after this.
You, your fathers and your grandfathers worked long and hard to produce a decent living for your families, but times are changing.
Через війну ви отримали зовсім непридатну для життя територію.
These great works are going to close for reconstruction.
Я тебе просив мене захищати.
Ну, ось і робота.
Не повіриш. Вчилась на археолога. Можна сказати, працюю майже по професії. Ніби свою історію відхлопуєш. Тільки події сталися не 1000 років назад, а за твого життя.
And everything has a beginning and an end.
So, if that doesn't whet your appetite, I think you're going to enjoy it. It's really cool, and it's the reviews that the New York Times, the LA Times, everyone is in love with this film. How to get it? Well, tickets cost $12 per household, and you get a three-day rental period. So you just go to theparktheater.org. It's going to be right at the top banner. You can click it there. You're going to be able to also see it on. There'll be multiple posts tomorrow on on Facebook. But if you would prefer to see a comedy, and clearly the reverse of that film, we have a free comedy coming up at Park Pix Flicks. Comedy from the 1950s called now I'm forgetting the name. Behave yourself. That's right. Behave yourself. In fact, we do have a lobby card for it. And Facebook page. So, now talking about next week's show, we have an incredible show. I mean, we've got so many great guests coming up. And again, today we were originally going to have Emily Aho here from the Newfoundland Pony Conservancy, which has luckily found a new home in Marlborough. Emily couldn't make it today, so we've rescheduled her, and I think she's going to be here in 2 weeks. And so you want to stay tuned for that. We'll get you more information on that. But next week, we have also a very special guest, a country bluegrass group called, well, I should tell you first what they were called. They were called Banjo Dan and the Midnight Plowboys. Now, we've had a lot of bands on here in the past 9 months of our 60-some shows. But the interesting thing about Banjo Dan and the Midnight Plowboys, I'm going to show you a theater flyer from 1974. This theater, the Park Theater, 1974. Was looking to see if I could find these guys again after I had found that. And that, after finding these guys with in that flyer, just looking around to try to see if there's any possibility they were still playing. Well, in fact, they are still playing. They're from Vermont, and I've tracked down Banjo Dan. Last name is Linder, and asked them if they would be interested to play at our theater again when we're open. Well, of course, we're not open yet fully. But I asked him, would you be willing to come on to our Monadnock Tonight show? And he and his brother Willie, who now tour as the Blue Sky Boys, and I have a picture of those guys, Banjo Dan and Willie Lindner, A Living Tradition, the Sky Blue. And it's as I said, country, bluegrass. They really are exceptional. Mandolin. I think you're going to really, really enjoy them. And, to have them back here at the park 46 years later, I cannot wait until we get them on our actual stage. But we'll do the next best thing is bring them. They have some film to bring of recent performances that they've done, and so we'll be able to see how they look, how they sound, and talk to them and see what their memories were of performing at the old Park Theater here on Main Street in downtown Jaffrey. So that something to look forward to a week from tonight. Another thing going on that I just want to remind everyone, because there are going fast, but we still have some left. And here's what we have left. So you have a chance. We still have some seats left. And if you want to go to park2021.com, or you can call us here at the offices of the Park Theater. It's 603-532-9300. We can take care of you over the phone and tell you all about the program of being part of this exclusive group of 330 folks that have named a seat, given a gift to the theater. And as I've said before, they name folks in honor, in memory of them. They name them for their own family. They name them in honor of their business, their organization, even their pets. So there's a lot of ways you can be creative with it. And it's a gift to yourselves or to someone else that will last for generations, with a plaque right on every seat. So that is that. And so if you have any questions, give us a call. But now, the centerpiece of our show today is our guest, Michael Dell'Orto. Michael is an actor. Michael is a writer. He is a director, a proud member of Actors Equity and SAG-AFTRA unions, and we'll be talking about that, and so much more. So let's find out what that more is all about through the magic of the internet. Let's bring in Michael Dell'Orto. There he is.
And there I am. Thank you very much, Steve, for having me on your show tonight. This is really great.
I am so glad. We should have had you on a lot earlier than this. But it all worked out, and Michael was able to, with his schedule and with Emily not having to reschedule, we were able to get Michael here. So it worked out beautifully. And
I hope she's going to be okay.
Yes, she is good, and all is good. God bless them. And we're thinking of you, Emily, and your family. And but she'll right now it looks like we will have her on in 2 weeks, which I think is the 11th, February 11th. But there's a lot to unbundle with Michael's background. And certainly we could spend probably an hour on any one of the areas of his background. But before we get to the theater and the film and the writing, let's find out a little bit about you, Michael. Number one, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Jersey City, New Jersey.
There you go.
For the first 22 years of my life, I lived there. Went to Catholic grade school and Catholic high school, right in my parish. Did not leave home until I went to college, and I went to Philadelphia to go to LaSalle College in Philadelphia. And right after college, I got married to a woman that I have known since first grade. We met in first grade. My wife, Jacqueline Kale, who maybe some of your listeners might know. She and I have known each other since 1959 is when we met in first grade in Sister Rosa's class. And we married in 75, just after we both graduated college, and lived in DC for a while because I was going to Catholic University to get my graduate degree. And she found work with an obscure little company called Digital Equipment Corporation down there, who eventually brought her the opportunity to come up here to New Hampshire. And when she told me about it, I said, why not? Well, it sounded like fun. So in 1979, we moved up to New Hampshire. We lived in Nashua for 6 years. And then in 1985, we moved here to Wilton in this house in Old Wilton Center, right around the corner. For people who know Andy's Summer Playhouse, we are literally right around the corner from Andy's Summer Playhouse. And we have been here for the last 35, going on 36 years.
Wow. And there's some interesting things that you've told me about your background, and something which I think people will find of great interest is that at a late part of your life, when you were, I think, 32, you found out that you were adopted.
I did. My mother, Victoria Dell'Orto, passed away in 1985, in January of 85. And unfortunately, the neighborhood she lived in Jersey City was not the best. And the house had been ransacked, literally, after she died. and everything stuff was torn. Things were thrown all over the place. It was terrible. But about 2 or 3 weeks after her funeral, I got a package in the mail from someone I vaguely recognized as one of my mother's friends, a neighbor. And in it, she placed a whole bunch of papers that had been that she found in a vacant lot near her house in Jersey City. And she stuffed them in an envelope because she saw my mother's name on them, stuffed them in an envelope, addressed them to my mother at her house, and assuming that they would get forwarded to whoever was going to take care of her stuff now that she was gone. And sure enough, like 2 weeks later, they showed up at my doorstep in Nashua. And I opened them up, and there was her will and her insurance papers and all these things that had been taken out of the house. But the one thing that caught my attention almost immediately was a little piece of paper that said, "In the matter of an adoption by Michael G. Dell'Orto and Victoria R. Dell'Orto." And wow. Well, now, my parents had always mentioned to me that they were trying to adopt a little Italian girl from the old country. And I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe this might be the little Italian girl that they were going to adopt, but it fell through. I opened up the thing and I started reading it, and it said, heretofore this and that, legal talk and this and that, a male child born May 12th, 1953, who shall henceforth be known as Michael G. Dell'Orto Jr. And I went, oh, that would be me, wouldn't it?
Oh, my.
I had no idea. And what's fascinating is that when I started to make phone calls to my mother's friends, to my to my aunts and uncles, they all assumed I knew. Every one of them assumed that that she had told me at some point, and she didn't. She never did. And my father had passed in 1962, so it was just my mother and I from that point on. And I had no clue. I had no idea. And all of a sudden now I'm confronted with this fact that I'm an adoptee. So
it's so interesting of how you got that material sent to you, which it was just kind of blowing in the wind, right?
Yeah, exactly. And, my suspicion is if it had disappeared, if they had trashed it, I was lucky that the people who robbed my mother's house were also litterers as well, but in addition to their many other crimes. But if it had been trashed, I don't know that anyone that knew would have brought it up with me, because they would have assumed that I knew. And so then it took me, to assimilate this. By that time, this is 1985. I'm married. I'm working. I have a baby. So I'm not all of a sudden going, oh my goodness, who am I? I knew who I was. I knew who my parents were. And the likelihood that two strangers I had never met and would probably never meet were going to have any impact on my life here and now was slim at best.
Yeah.
But the more I read about, especially the mothers who gave their children up for adoption, especially back in the 50s, that there was a lot of trauma involved. There was a lot of recrimination and regret. And I said, well, maybe, I owe it to this woman, whoever she is, wherever she is, presuming she's even still alive, to try and make contact. Now, this is in the pre-internet days, which made it a lot more difficult. But a classmate of mine from high school was a lawyer, and he helped me very much with that. And long story short, about 8 years later, we finally tracked down my birth mother, still living in northern New Jersey. And lo and behold, through her, I had a half sister whom I'm still in touch with. And so we had a relationship of one kind or another. It was still a little awkward. I mean, it was interesting. This woman, this experience had damaged her in a number of ways. And I spoke to my half sister about it later on after she passed, in the ways that having had the out of wedlock pregnancy and all this other stuff had done things to her that made her life not the life it could have been or should have been. But I tried the best I could. I sent her cards on Mother's Day. I called her, all this other stuff. She passed away, 15 years ago, maybe more. But
you were able to meet her in person?
Yes, I was actually able to meet her. I mean, I went to northern New Jersey. I spent time with her. My sister came up to visit me at one point. her and her then husband. It was nice. It was nice, having been raised as an only child. It was really great to find out that I had a sibling. Okay. And now with that, of course, the plot thickens later on in the story, because she told me a name because she asked me if I was interested in who the birth father was. And at the time, I wasn't, very frankly. I could have cared less at that point about it. And because, my father had passed away when I was 9 years old in 1962. And because of that, I've always sort of put him on a pedestal. Yeah. And he's got a really, he's really in my heart so much, because I miss him so much. I mean, he's been dead, almost 60 years. But I wasn't interested at the time. But then, of course, comes along A, the internet, and B, instant DNA testing.
Right.
And so my wife, Jackie, said to me, she said, well, why don't you sign up for Ancestry? We can do research on our families and stuff. And I've done research on my adoptive family and my grandparents and my aunts and uncles and all that sort of stuff. But of course, I took the DNA test. And so, of course, all manner of relatives are, coming out of the woodwork here. And then one day, not long ago, I was confronted with a person who they claimed was a half sibling.
Wow.
And I reached out to this person who himself was an adoptee, and he had no clue about anything. But then a woman who was a second cousin, or a first cousin once removed, I can't keep that straight. She reached out to me because she said, I don't see any of our family on your family tree. And I said, well, no, I'm adopted, and this is my adopted family. And she says, it's interesting because I think I know who your father is. Okay. So she pointed me towards several people on her family tree, and we were, she was saying, well, this is why this guy couldn't be it, because he died too early, and this one. She said, but I have this gentleman who I think could probably be your birth father. And interestingly enough, the gentleman whom she pointed out had just passed away in 2019. Yeah, 2019. Just passed away at 94 years old. So she said, well, I know his son. So we're going to reach out to his son and see if he'd be interested in doing the Ancestry DNA thing. Well, so of course he eventually does this, and as it turns out, a sibling. So I've made contact with him. He lives in upstate New York. The other half-sibling brother lives in Alaska. So now all of a sudden I go from being an only child to having 3 siblings.
There you go.
And it's absolutely fascinating, and it's been interesting, to develop what relationship I can develop with these people, because I didn't grow up with them, but the gentleman, my half sibling, who was his, how shall I put this, legitimate son.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We were all concerned. I was concerned. It's like, I don't want to mess up your relationship with your dad. To come along and say, oh, guess what? Your dad, your dad's been making babies elsewhere. But as it turns out, he kind of knew that his father was not as faithful to his mother as perhaps he should have been. So we've had several discussions about that.
Well, now there's another interesting, that if that isn't enough, and again, that's its own movie.
That's its own novel. Yes, exactly.
Or novel, any of the above. But you almost ventured in your early life into the priesthood.
Yes, I did. I was, once again, it's interesting because Catholic schools nowadays, they're disappearing, which is unfortunate. But, in my youth, the heyday of Catholic schools, almost every parish had its own grade school. Some parishes had their own high school. And then there were regional Catholic high schools all over the country. And in northern New Jersey, I was a communicant at St. Aidan's Parish in Jersey City. There was St. Aidan's School, where I went for 8 years with my lovely bride in the same class, all 8 years. And then I went to Catholic high school. And while I was in late grade school and early high school, I started to think about the priesthood. And I began to prepare for the priesthood throughout late grade school and high school at the Passionist Monastery in Union City, New Jersey. And when the time came for college, I was accepted as into priestly formation with the Passionists. on campus at LaSalle College, now LaSalle University in Pennsylvania. And I spent 2.5 years there with them, living in community, for a lot of different reasons, not the least of which was the siren call of the theater. I did not stay.
Yeah.
But I still am very active in the church. I am a communicant at Divine Mercy Parish in Peterborough.
Yep.
I'm a Eucharistic minister and an extraordinary minister of the Eucharist, Eucharistic minister, and a lector at that parish, where our mutual friend Kathy Manfrey is also a parishioner.
Absolutely.
And I've kept up with it ever since. And
but now it's interesting because priesthood is certainly some of it is being in front of a flock, being in front of an audience.
Yeah, yeah.
So what got the bug into you for acting? What was it and when was that exposure kind of cemented in your head?
High school, definitely high school. I mean, I did plays we did little plays in grade school. In fact, I was in one with my wife in 8th grade, Artaban, the fourth wise man. I was the title character. But in high school, freshman year of high school, my CYO, the church, the St. Aidan CYO Club, teen organization, used to do a play every year, used to do a musical every spring. And the spring of my freshman year in high school, it happened to be Bye Bye Birdie. Okay, so I go and I wanted to audition for Bye Bye Birdie. So I went and I sang and I read what they gave me. And I got cast as the father, Harry McAfee. And I think a lot of actors, I think Lisa, your lovely wife, could attest to this. There's that moment when you get out there on stage and you realize they're not laughing at you, they're laughing with you.
Yeah.
There's a power to that, especially if you're a shy kid, especially if you were, you're not anybody special and, you're not the guy everybody wants to, pal around with and all that other stuff. But all of a sudden, you have this power. And it's this thing that you're actually good at, maybe, and you could maybe get better at it if you work.
Yeah.
And there it was. And so I did plays all through high school. I then decided I was a drama major in college, even while I was studying with the Passionists, which was a source of some friction between us from time to time. But I always believed that there was a vocation to be had working amongst theater people. In fact, at the time when I was still in the seminary, all of my classmates in the drama program would Michael, can we go someplace quiet and talk? There's something I want to get off my mind. So all of a sudden I was like this little minister in the drama program. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the Mass is the longest running show in the world.
Yeah.
Performances every day in and day out, 24/7.
Right.
And it started there. And fascinatingly enough, in a conversation with my half brother, he said that his father, our biological father, had been a performer, not professionally by any matter of means, but was a singer, had a decent voice, and had wanted to go into performing, at least, musically or whatnot, but that his family discouraged him. So that's, so there's a little genetics going on. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who can understand this? But, at college, and then I went off to graduate school, and that's where I got my equity card, was while working at the Olney Theater in Olney, Maryland, while I was a student at Catholic University. And I got to work with some really wonderful, wonderful people while I was there, and learned a lot. And it was just, this is where I'm being led, at first I thought, to get theological about it, God was leading me towards the church, but no, God was leading me towards the stage.
Well, to keep everyone and to add a little visual candy to all of this. And I found this, when I was reading your bio, to be very interesting and fun. And I'm sure that you do get, I think you told me you get emails from folks asking about this. And I said something about clues at the beginning of the program. Well, Michael was in, which they were doing at the time, which was very state of the art. Parker Brothers' famous game Clue had made a VCR version of it. And Michael was in two separate games, I guess you'd call them in a way.
Yeah, they were two separate.
And it was 1985.
Yeah, 1984, 85, and then 1987 was the sequel.
And you played Monsieur Brunette.
Monsieur Brunette, the lawyer.
Now, thanks to our wonderful friends at YouTube, this footage of this game has been transferred to YouTube.
Yes.
And it's like an hour-long video. And actually, I'd have to tell you, when I was looking through it, I was actually it was kind of fun, even though you really need to have the game in association with it.
Yeah.
But it was really fun watching this.
Mm.
So, but what I was able to do was to clip a little of Michael from the footage.
Oh boy.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here is Michael Dell'Orto in Clue as Monsieur Brunette.
Miss Peach.
Melba, honey, I've never ever been to a will reading.
Monsieur Buddy, he made out this will a few days before he died.
A new will?
You cannot trust anyone.
Phooey.
It seems Monsieur Buddy suspected you, his old friends, of wanting to kill him.
That's ridiculous.
Are we disinherited now?
No, that's the strange part. I wish that all who attend the reading of my will be declared my legal heirs according to the following conditions.
Well,
It's nice to know he didn't hold a grudge.
Does this include strangers?
maybe you ought to leave.
What about strangers?
It says all who attend. Miss Peach, Sergeant Gray, you are in on the deal.
I'm an heiress.
That's not fair.
The only trouble is none of us can get our hands on the money until all the others are dead.
Well. I think that's a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun to do. The thing that's fascinating about this is that, interestingly enough, at least according to Parker Brothers at the time, this was the first ever commercially available interactive home video game. So we started a trend, God help us all. The other interesting thing is that I still am good friends with most of the people in that video, those that are still with us. There are a few that have passed on, alas. But those.
Where was it? Pardon me. Where was it shot?
All right, the first one, that's Clue 1. That's Clue, the VCR mystery game. And that was shot in a private mansion in Wenham, Massachusetts. And the poor people who rented out their house to us, to the production crew, really didn't know what they were getting into. I can remember one day, the production company had asked them specifically not to return during filming, but they did one day. They'd forgotten something in the house they needed. And they were absolutely appalled because there's cable everywhere, there's lights, they've got things nailed into things on the wall. And the guy nearly threw us all out. But, it was fascinating. These people, I mean, I've known, in fact, one of the characters there was Jack Neary, who's had a couple of plays produced at the Peterborough Players.
Oh no!
Yes, that's
what role did Jack play?
That he is Professor Plum.
Professor Plum.
He is Professor Plum.
Well,
yes, so
I got to go back one more time and take a peek at that.
Yeah. You'll see. But yeah, no, Jack was in it, and it was lovely, and that's how. In fact, that's where I met Jack, and Jack and I now go back many years.
Well, for fans of the Park Theater and the River Street Theater, just for reference, Jack Neary, we did a reading of his play First Night, along with John Manning, maybe 2.5 years ago, and
right.
But of course, if you're a fan of the Peterborough Players, you've seen several of Jack's shows, so yeah, that's another good little piece of.
Featuring Gordon Clapp and Kathy Manfrey. There was that. The play that
played in Vermont, played in off Broadway, and yep.
No.
So now I know I'm being funny with that because it's one of those things actors get, and it's fun, and that's kind of because it has that cachet of games. It lives on in game history forever and ever.
Well, you know what's fascinating is that I actually do. I still get fan mail because I have it on my website. There's, I have both videos, full videos on the website for people to see. And I still occasionally get emails from people saying, "Oh, I remember this when I was a kid. I remember, I grew up with this. We used to watch it all the time." The fascinating thing, though, there's a documentary that a filmmaker in Boston did, a guy named Frank Durant and Tim Labonte. They did a documentary on the making of the Clue videos. Okay, fascinating stuff. You should take a look at that at some point.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that most people never really played the game. They just watched the video and would goof around with it. So we became something of a cult thing. Who knew, right?
Well, you can if you go to Michael's website, which we'll be putting up in a little bit. You can get it there. But if you just do Clue VCR,
yes,
those two words in YouTube, you will find them there, and they're really a scream to take a look at this. But I thought it was actually very well produced, and
well, it was Century 3 Teleproductions in Boston, which was a big production house back in the day. They're not there anymore. Gentleman who directed it, a guy named Ed Buffman, has lots of credits now. He's like a major commercial director in the Eastern market. But what's fascinating here, this is to all the actors out there who may be listening. This is why perseverance pays off. I was not the first choice for the role. They had cast another actor, and the other actor, for reasons of his own, turned it down. And so they gave it to me. So by sheer happenstance, there it is.
Now, how were you cast for it? Did you go in for?
Oh yeah, no. There were rounds of auditions at Century 3 Teleproductions in Boston. We asked to read from the script. We read in groups, with other people. They put us with different people to see how it was. And I know you're going to talk about my union membership coming up at some point.
That's coming up.
But here's the thing. When we were all finally cast in the show, Parker Brothers said, well, this is, something brand new and it doesn't fall under union jurisdiction. So we're going to make you an offer. I will not go into the details of the offer they made us, but suffice it to say, none of us were pleased with the offer. So we all repaired to the bar across the street. And Cheryl McMahon, who plays Mrs. White, happened to be on good terms with the gentleman whose name escapes me at the moment, who was the coordinator for SAG in Boston at the time. So she said, I'll go and I'll talk to him and I'll see if he can do something for us. So long story short, all of a sudden the union got involved. And they went from offering us a small amount of money that they had to basically, I want to say quadruple under a union contract, because we were doing this particular video, we were shooting 14-hour days. I had to be in Wenham at 5 o'clock in the morning, every morning for 2.5 weeks. We were shooting until 8 o'clock at night, sometimes 9 o'clock at night. I would go home. I would try to get a couple of hours sleep and hope I didn't wake the baby when I was leaving in the morning, and we'd come back and we'd do it again. And then in the middle of shooting this video, my mother passed away.
Oh.
And so they let me out for a couple of days so that I could go and make the arrangements and go and the funeral and do all that. And then I remember I came back on a Sunday night and they were working, and I came back in, and I have to tell you, I mean, this is why I love these people. I love these people more than I can say, all of them, the lot of them. The welcome I got and the hugs and the cards and the how are you doing and are you going to be okay? It was magnificent. It was just absolutely lovely. This is our community.
Yeah, well, that's part of the acting community, whether it's theater or on film. A bunch of people get together and form a family for a period of time, and if it works out well, you tend to maintain those relationships, like you said with your family from Clue.
Exactly.
Now, talking about directors, there's another director that you worked with in film, which Mr. David O. Russell.
Oh, the Wild Man.
The Wild Man. I think if people know David O. Russell, you can, well, we're going to be talking about Michael's film, which is The Fighter, but he also did Silver Linings Playbook. He did American Hustle and several others.
Yeah.
But he is known to have a temper, is known to be a tough director. But now tell us about The Fighter and the role you played in The Fighter.
Well, okay. So first of all, let's put this in perspective.
Yeah.
If you were to look at the script that I was given, all right, you wouldn't even see my lines because they were just literally supposed to be thrown off by somebody in the background. Okay. But God bless the union, a line is a line and you get paid for it. Okay. It's 2 lines. Don't blink or you'll miss me. Okay. I played this is for The Fighter, the WBF boxing commissioner in Britain. Okay. Or World Boxing Federation, something like that. I can't remember now. And he gets to announce the weights of both fighters. And those were my lines. But now the thing of it is that I was also just in a couple of still shots in the film and a couple of stills that made it onto the internet. And my smiling face actually made it into the film's trailer of all things. And once again, do not blink, you will miss me. But David O. Russell was a lovely man who, for the 8 hours of our association on that particular day, referred to me, if he referred to me at all, was as that guy. Tell that guy to go over. Tell that guy to. But what was amazing is that when I went to then audition for background in American Hustle, I walk in. There's David O. Russell. And he says, "Hey, it's the boxing commissioner. How you doing?" It's like, "You remember?" He says, "Yeah, of course I remember. You were great." So it's like, okay, fine. But David O. Russell is a wild man. But I don't. He wasn't. He was wild just simply because he was the most enthusiastic person I have ever met in my life. Right. That's what he was. And he got really good work out of all of his people. I mean,
he definitely did.
I mean, excellent work out of all of
Christian Bale and Mark Wahlberg at some of their best.
That was the scary part. So, okay, so there's the scene where they're interviewing in Britain. The reporters are all interviewing the Wahlberg and Bale characters. And I'm sitting there on the dais with them. Now, that was the bulk of what that scene, of what my day was literally sitting in a chair. I'm sitting here. Over here to this side is Christian Bale. Beyond him is Mark Wahlberg. Christian Bale is, he's this close to me. And I was petrified. I was absolutely petrified because I don't want to screw up. I don't want to do anything bad. I don't want to get him mad at me. I don't want to do anything wrong. And I just watched these guys doing, and there were plenty of other friends of mine in this film who had much larger roles than I did. Oh my goodness gracious. But I watched these guys do their work, and it was a revelation to see how focused Bale is. Never broke character, not for 1 second.
He had some amazing scenes in that film. Some amazing scenes.
And there are so many Boston, New England-based actors in that movie. It's wonderful. And when Christian Bale, God bless that man's heart, and I will love him for this forever, when he came up to get his Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for that film, he gave a shout out to all the Boston actors.
Very nice.
So I want to give a shout out to all the people from Boston who had roles in this film. God love them.
Well, let's talk about something you referred to earlier, and it's your relationship with the unions that you belonged to for many years, and how you got your your SAG card for Clue,
yes,
but also Actors Equity, and why they've been important to you. And to a point where actually for many years you were representing Actors Equity in the New England region. So I think for people to understand the importance of what these unions do for their members, and I think as anyone knows, actors, there's no such thing as a full-time acting job. They don't happen unless you're very lucky on Broadway, that you get into something that's lasting more than just weeks or months, but they come, they go, they go, they go, they come, they go.
Right.
But Michael, talk a little bit about what union membership has meant to you.
Well, I started out, like I said, when I was a student at Catholic University, they were then at that point affiliated with the Olney Theater in Olney, Maryland, which was a union theater, summer stock. And I worked there as an intern, a technician for 4 seasons, something like that. And one of the wonderful things about working there as a technician is that if you got a chance to do a small non-equity role on the stage, you got $20 a week extra for doing that. So that was really great. And so I think my first role on the Olney stage was in playing the workman in Uncle Vanya. And I remember my line. I still remember my line. Is the doctor here? So I still have the hat I wore in that role. But what was interesting is that there were actors from all over, regionally based, actors in DC, most of whom were at Arena Stage at the time, but also actors from New York and LA. And the lovely thing about the environment at the Olney and at Catholic University was that we as students were welcomed by these people, these professionals, who treated us as peers. And it was really lovely. And so we got to talk with them and ask them questions and all this other stuff. And the one thing that a lot of these people, would talk about was their union membership, and especially older actors at that time. We're talking about the mid 70s here, 75, 76, 77. Guys who had gotten their careers started in the early 30s, who, remember working with people who, before there was a union, and the stories that they heard about the bad old days before the union. And, watching all of this, realizing that if I was going to try and make a career in this, the idea that I could work and get a reasonably decent salary for the time, guaranteed, get hired as an employee, not as a gig worker, although that term wasn't in use in those days, that when I worked, my employer would have to contribute to health insurance and a pension. And whenever I talk to younger actors, I always say, I ask them how old they are. And I say, well, younger actors who are considering membership in Actors Equity, I said, you're not thinking about this right now because you're 20? Okay, but when you hit my age, the notion of a pension all of a sudden looms very large. I get a check every month.
That's great.
I get a check every month from my 40-odd years of working in the business. This is really great. But the protections of it, and also learning about why things are the way they are, how we get to negotiations, what theaters need to do to function properly and safely. That's right. One of the revelations I got from the union, which was basically their primary businesses are safety. To make sure that we work in a safe working environment, because between people jumping off things, actors on roller skates, pyrotechnics, smoke and fog, break stages, you name it. People, dancers having to do massive choreography, Lion King things that are that tall and weigh 1,000 pounds,
Well, it's funny. I was talking to Gus Kekkonen this afternoon, talking about safety, and he is going out of town. I'm trying to remember where, but to direct production. And the union told the production company that he had to fly Delta because Delta leaves. They're one of the only few airlines that actually leaves seats, so empty seats in between everyone.
Right.
And they mandated that, which I thought, again, that somebody's looking over the shoulder of the actors for the actors.
Yep.
In terms of the negotiation of final contracts and so forth. So very good, very good.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's going to be a long time before we see live theater the way it used to be.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, it was a theater in New Hampshire, the Weather Vane, that got one of the first permissions to do live theater this past summer, mostly because at the time there was not a lot of COVID in the North Country.
Yeah.
And so they had social distancing in the seats. People were required to wear masks. The actors had quarantined together for 2 weeks prior to rehearsals. They were willing to pay the actors for that time, you know. And so that was an experiment that worked. Nobody got sick. Nothing bad happened. It was really great, you know. Unfortunately, now things are not as good as they were then. It's going to be a while. But what's scary is that I'm fortunate. I married a woman with a real job, you know, and even now that she's retired, we are living off our savings and, you know, Social Security and my pension and all that other stuff. But my colleagues, especially my colleagues in Boston, are scared. They are frightened because there's no work. People are dropping out of the business left and right because they need to earn a living at something. And most of them are going to lose their health insurance because they're not working.
Right. And, you know, and it's, Michael and I were talking about some things that we're trying to plan for the Park Theater, and some of them relate to Actors Equity. And I was talking to Actors Equity, and they've gone from furloughing so many people to dropping them, and it's a real shame. I mean, and that's just the organization. That's the union organization, and that the pension is in good shape, but the health is not.
No, it is not, and it's going to be a while before it can come back. Which is one of the reasons why the union has always been an advocate for universal health insurance, universal health care in this country, because it would be lovely to take that burden off the union of providing. When I first joined in 1977, August of 1977, when I first joined Actors Equity, I think it was either 2 or 4 weeks of employment bought you an entire year's worth of health coverage. Okay. Then AIDS hit.
Yeah.
And that hit us very, very hard. And the trouble was, of course, is now we were a high risk group. And so the insurance got more and more expensive to the point where you have to work, at least the last I remember. Now things are changing rapidly because of the situations, but now you have to work 11 weeks to get a half year's coverage and 19 weeks to get a full year's coverage. Now that's still a good bargain, pretty much, but still 19 weeks you talk to your wife, you know what the deal is.
It's tough to add up those weeks.
Well,
I'm looking at the clock, Michael. We're coming towards the end of the show, but one last thing I wanted to ask you about, or certainly to inform people, because I'm assuming that they can still pick it up, is that you're also an author.
Well, yes.
And here is Michael's book that concerns his town that he's been in so many years. And I'm going to bring it up, and let me take us.
We're back.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Everyone's seen the book. For some reason, my audio was not allowing you to come.
Your audio cut out.
But is the book available?
Oh yeah, no, you can still get it. I think the Toadstool might have it. It's certainly on Amazon.
Well, start with Toadstool, and
just to be able to go and buy it at our town hall in Wilton. But now, unfortunately, the way with COVID, nobody's going in and out of town hall anymore. So, but it's available. It's available. It is a lovely book in the Images of America series that I worked on with 2 other people, one from Lineborough, one from Temple, and also with the assistance of everybody at the Wilton Historical Society, who, were instrumental in making that book happen. It's, goodness gracious, it came out 20 years ago, and we're still selling it, which is really great. It's absolutely great. But it's, our little town here, I mean, all the towns around the Monadnock region. I mean, they all have these lovely histories. I mean, you live over in Jaffrey Center. You know what it's like there. It's what beautiful little towns we live in. And
we're very, very lucky. Everyone lives up in this neck of the woods. We're all very lucky, and we do have wonderful towns with wonderful histories and wonderful people. And we're lucky souls.
Yeah, no, indeed.
We were very, I'm sorry, I'm just again looking at the clock, but Michael, we are so glad and fortunate that you were able to join us today at a short notice. You had so much to tell us, and we had a lot of fun and learning a lot about you, about the industry you're involved with, and many other topics, because you have a wealth of them. But we thank you for being on Monadnock Tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
We hope to see you on a stage somewhere.
Your mouth to God's ears.
All right. All the best for you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All righty. Well, that wraps up another show for us, ladies and gentlemen. And we are so glad that you came with us today. And what I always like to let folks know, that if you would like to sponsor our program, it's affordable if you're a business, or you can also underwrite us as a tax deductible contribution. Or maybe you have ideas for guests as good as Michael, or some of the other ones I was mentioning that are coming up. Emily from the Pony Conservancy. If you have ideas for guests, please, we'd love to hear from you. Just send them to parktv@theparktheater.org, or give us a call at 532-9300. One thing, I am going to go back for a second. Whoops, I'm going to go here. I am going to put up Michael's website. So if you want to find out all things Michael Dell'Orto, you want to go to michaeldellorto.com. So write that down. Pretty easy to remember. He's got a good one there. michaeldellorto.com. And you can get in contact with Michael, or you can see his wonderful background that we were discussing today. Also, that is about it. I'm just trying to think of some other things that we had going on. But no, you know that we've got a great movie starting tomorrow, Atlantis. Check it out. Go to theparktheater.com. Again, we thank our guest, Michael Dell'Orto. And we hope to see you next week when we have the Blue Sky Boys here. And as we always say at the end of the show, please be safe, be healthy. Number one, be kind, and be hopeful, because we can do this. And this is Steve Jackson signing off. Have a great weekend and a great week.